My name is Nina Domashkina. I'm with the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York. I'm the senior coordinator with bank operations. With me here is Brian Loeb, who is our research and outreach coordinator. And Brian is fairly new to our organization, but he has gone up and running with us quite quickly, so we're excited to have him. So we are here to talk to you about the Federal Home Loan Banks, the system as a whole, not just the New York bank, and particularly our affordable housing and community investment programs. Now, by show of hands, how many of you have heard of the home loan banks? Woohoo! That's amazing. How many know about the affordable housing program? Still good. We're good about this. All right, so before we get into the program, which is the affordable housing program is the one we will focus on, let's cover who we are. Figure out how to work this.
Should go different laptop.
Technical difficulties.
It slides
Please
down
hold.
on the side.
All right. So on the right here is the map of the U.S. And you will see all of the home loan banks listed there. They're by district. They cover different districts. But we are one system. We are a system of 11 home loan banks. We were created by Congress in 1932 in response to the Great Depression and the housing crisis at the time. And our mission is to provide our members, who are financial institutions, with reliable source of liquidity for housing finance, community lending, asset liability management, and long and short-term liquidity. It is important to understand, however, that even though we were created by Congress, we are not a government agency. We are a privately held and owned and operated cooperative of member institutions. And what that means is our members, banks, thrifts, insurance companies, credit unions, CDFIs, they own us, they buy stock from us to be able to be our members, and we in turn serve them, and we serve the communities that they serve. Sorry about that. So with the entire system serves about 7,000 members, financial institutions. And many of you may have worked with a bank in your local area to get some funding for your communities. We play an essential role in helping members meet their credit needs of the communities that they serve. And without the home loan banks, it would be a lot more difficult for local lenders to provide credit and financial services to families, to farms, to local businesses, to tribes across the nation. So since the home loan banks do not receive federal funding, how do we make our money? So we raise our funds by issuing debt instruments in the capital markets, and the Office of Finance of the home loan banks is our fiscal agents. They're the ones who are responsible for handling the issuance of our debt instruments across the entire system. The strength and the size of the cooperative of the system as a whole allows each individual bank to offer funding to its members at the lowest possible rates. And so, what do we have here? So, although our primary source of business are advances, which are loans, we make loans to our members to cover their credit needs. We also offer a wide array of credit products and corresponding services. But the reason we're here, we offer affordable housing community investment programs to our members. So, stay here. One of the so the three main programs are affordable housing program, the down payment program, which is the set aside, and community lending program. So let's cover some more detail on these. No, stay. The competitive program, the competitive affordable housing program, provides funding for rehabilitation, acquisition, and new construction of affordable housing projects. And these are projects aimed at low, very low, and moderate income households. Later in our presentation, Brian will cover the application process for the affordable housing program and also the scoring methodology on what will get your project the points to get the funding. In addition to the competitive program, Each home loan bank offers at least one first-time homebuyer program available directly to the households. And these programs are grants towards the purchase or rehabilitation of someone's first home. And in many cases, it also provides it covers the cost of homeownership counseling to help first-time homebuyers achieve their dream of homeownership. Our community lending programs, and we'll cover a certain piece that we were just asked about, are discretionary programs for housing, economic development, and job creation. And these programs provide loans, referred to as advances across the system, to our members so our members use the funds to extend affordable credit to the communities, increase the ability of home finance to families, and also support small businesses, commercial, manufacturing, social services, and public facility projects across the nation. Another part of these programs that some of the home loan banks offer is disaster relief funding. And what that particular program is, it is not offered, at least at the Home Loan Bank of New York, it's not offered at all times. But in case of a disaster, if your area has been designated as a disaster area that has been hit by a local disaster, be it a flood, a couple of years ago New York City and New York, New Jersey were hit by Sandy. So we did have areas that required additional funding. And these are low-cost advances that we provide to our members, who can then extend that credit at low rates to the public or to the organizations that need to create those, fix up the homes, get the communities up and running again. So let's talk about the affordable housing program. Like I said before, it is a competitive grant program designed to address local housing needs. And is administered regionally by each home loan bank. So even though there are 11 home loan banks, we are our own entity. We are not one bank across the entire country. We do have our own boards of directors, our own advisory councils. Rita Hearn is on our advisory council. We're excited to have her. So by regulation, each home loan bank is required to allocate 10% of our prior year's income towards the affordable housing program. Then what each home loan bank does is they determine the distribution of the funds between the competitive program, which is the projects, the affordable housing projects, and the first-time home buyer set-aside programs, which is the grant program for first-time home buyers. And as you can see in the chart on your left, the distribution of the funds towards the competitive program and the set-aside programs vary greatly by home loan bank to home loan bank. And the reason for that is because the needs of the districts are different. In some areas, first-time homebuyer assistance is more needed as opposed to affordable housing projects. In some, affordable housing is the need of the communities. But over the life of the affordable housing program, the home loan banks have awarded over $5 billion towards the purchase, construction, or rehabilitation of more than 7,000 units of affordable housing, which is quite impressive, I think. So how can you get the money? HP funds play an important role in development of affordable housing across our communities, and they serve as a lot of the funds serve as a gap filler for funding on affordable housing projects. So there are many. In many cases, our affordable housing grant might be the primary source on the smaller projects. On many larger scale projects, we are a gap filler. So if a project goes out and obtains other federal funding for the projects, and they have that gap in funding, they come to us and they ask us to fill that gap. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, anyone that's actually planning to do a low-income housing tax credit project, I suggest you always go ahead and fill out for the affordable housing program as part of your financing. And then that also helps you to score with the state that you're trying to find other funding coming in. So if you're ever thinking about doing it, make sure that you're planning to do, and they do have trainings too in each district. I'm actually planning to go to one on May 3rd in Chicago. So.
Fantastic. Those are fantastic trainings, and yes, do go to as many of them as you can there. They do, as we will tell you about how to get points for our application or for the applications across the home loan banks. All of the other programs or funding that are available from other sources, from HUD, from the like USDA funding, they do offer trainings, and they are a great opportunity to go check them out and learn how to get that. So let's go back to this. So to get the funds, each home loan bank offers a competitive AHP round every year. That timing of the rounds differs by home loan bank. And we will show you the links at the end of the presentations on the last slide as well for all of the websites for the home loan banks, and they post when their round is open. Our round opens, I believe this week, right? It opens on Thursday and it will close about 6 weeks later. So our sponsors can submit projects for the next 6 weeks to us. So, project sponsors, what does that mean? So every project will have a lead sponsor. And sponsors can be nonprofits, for-profit, affordable housing organizations, housing development organizations, Native American tribes or housing authorities, as well as state and local governments. And AHP funds, like I've said before, can be used for acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation of both rental and owner-occupied housing. So for rental projects, the funds must be used for permanent rental units or transitional housing, and must have at least 20% of the units reserved for households that earn 50% or less of median income. Never say that. For owner-occupied housing, which are 1 to 4 family homes, condos, co-op units, all units must be reserved for households earning 80% or less of area median income. And it's important to know that all those small, I already mentioned this, use other funding. That was the point. So across the affordable housing programs across the system, 2/3 of AHP projects obtain funds from other sources. And as we mentioned before, some of the sources are USDA funding, HUD programs such as the FHA funds, low-income housing tax credit program, home investment partnership program known as HOME, community development block grants, and there are other state and federal funding across the country. So the application process. How do you go about getting the money? So to qualify for the funds, the sponsor does have to work with a member institution. The sponsors can't just come to the home loan bank. You do have to go through a member bank, be that a credit union, insurance company, a thrift, a commercial bank in your local area that is a member of a home loan bank. So I will let Brian cover the application process.
Great, thanks, Nina. An important point to note on what Nina just said about working with one of our member institutions is the bank doesn't necessarily have to lend to your project. You may take advantage of tax credit money or other funding sources, but the bank doesn't necessarily have to loan to your project. They just have to agree to partner with you to submit the application to the home loan bank district that they belong to. So let me go back a couple of slides to a chart that Nina showed here on the right. This is the success rate, if you will, of applications for affordable housing programs across the home loan bank district. And it's called the competitive program because it is just that. And those of you in the room who've had experience with AHP in your home loan bank district know that it's not a sure thing, not even close to it. And trainings like this make it harder because we hope that after this, these kinds of events, we get more and better applications, thereby making it harder for the rest of you. So, but it's a good thing. We want to see good quality projects that are going to succeed, that are going to be viable, that are going to meet the housing needs in your communities. So to get the money, you have to clear 3 steps. One is eligibility. You have to show that you meet the bare minimum criteria for participating in the AHP, and that's something Nina started to talk about with the income thresholds for the area and for the residents for both the rental and the home ownership projects. Then if you clear the eligibility threshold, the next step is you're going to get scored across 9 different criteria against all the other projects that cleared that first hurdle. And in this scoring phase is where each home loan bank has the opportunity to adapt the criteria to fit the needs of their local communities. So we'll talk about some examples later on of how some home loan bank districts have used that capability to encourage and promote tribal housing projects specifically, and how other banks are using that flexibility in different ways. If you score well, again, relatively against the other projects that submit in your round, then you go on to the third and final phase, which is financial review, financial feasibility. When we fund projects, we want to make sure that they're going to succeed, like I said, so we need to go through with a fine-tooth comb every line of the budget, every other funding source, every cost projection, and make sure that they're not out of line with what we would expect in that area. And we want to see projects that are going to be viable. Because just like tax credits, we stick around. So for home ownership projects, we're going to sign a retention agreement for 5 years, for rental projects for 15 years, and during that time, we need to see that those units that you promised to be affordable are going to remain so. And so when we look at your budget, we're going to make sure that that's possible. Great, so let's talk about the first hurdle, and that's eligibility. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that we're trying to fund, and this is really across all the districts, projects that are real, not speculative. So we want to see the most important piece of that eligibility piece is site control. You need to demonstrate that you have ownership of the land, ownership of the building, where the project is going to be. This is not for projects that you're planning for the long term. We need to see that the train has already started down the tracks. The next thing, like I mentioned, is you need to commit that the units are going to be affordable for the length of the retention period. And the last most important piece to note on eligibility is the subsidy per unit. And this can be a little tricky. Each home loan bank sets their own maximum amount of the amount of grant they're going to give per unit. In New York, our maximum is up to $30,000 per unit for both rental and home ownership projects, but it varies across the districts. The one common denominator is that all the home loan banks cap it at 10%, cap each grant at 10% of that year's award. So in New York, our budget envelope is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million this year. So any one project can't get more than $3 million this year. And that'll be similar across the home loan banks. Great, so you clear the first hurdle. Congrats. That means it's a real project. It means you have site control. Now you have to demonstrate that you meet all the criteria. The first one is donated properties. And all the home loan banks, so what I'm going to talk about are criteria that apply across the home loan banks, and I'll make specific reference to where there are some differences. So all the home loan banks prioritize projects that involve land or buildings that have been donated in some way. And from what we've heard, we've had some discussions with our colleagues at other home loan banks who give awards to more tribal housing projects than we do, is that sometimes this first category can be a little tough for projects involving tribal housing authorities to get credit for if the property is like donated by the tribe. Because one thing that we need to see is that it's an arm's length transaction. So I'll make this point again later, but one thing you want to pay particular attention to is how each home loan bank defines each one of their terms in what's called their implementation plan to make sure that you really are going to get the points in the scoring phase that you expect to get. The second one is sponsorship by a nonprofit or government entity. So congratulations, if you're here, you're going to get points in this category. So don't worry about that. If you're a 501c3, if you're a tribal housing department, if you're a TDHE, it's pretty likely that you're going to score well in this category. The third criteria is targeting, and that just means who's going to live in the building. So while you have to clear the eligibility threshold, the bare minimum of affordable units, you get rewarded even more for more very low income units, more low income units, more moderate income units, and you get hurt if you have more market rate units. The fourth is homeless housing. It's something in New York we wish we could award more funding to. We have a serious need there, and we know there's a serious need in many of your tribes as well. But it's something that if you can commit to having a certain amount of homeless housing in your project, you will do better in the scoring phase. The fifth criteria is empowerment, and that is activities that you offer, activities and services that you offer to the residents of the building. So it could be flu shots, job training, financial counseling, any of these things. If you work with a local nonprofit or you're providing these services yourself as the housing department, or the tribe provides these services, if you can show that it's going to be available to all the residents, you're going to do well in this category.
Is that the category where you have the memorandum of understanding?
Yeah, so each home loan bank requires a different level of proof for what's going to happen. Some require memoranda of understanding between the sponsor and by the nonprofit that's going to provide the services. Others are more lax and just kind of take you at your word. Although down the line, if you do get the funding and you come back to draw down that money, or during the retention period, you need to prove certain things, they're going to make sure that those services are being offered.
So the memorandum of understanding is a good way to do that.
It is a very good way. So the sixth and seventh categories are where each home loan bank district has the most flexibility to adapt their program to the local housing needs. So they can choose from any of these categories on this long list and add others as well if they like. Something in New York that we reward is economic diversity. This is projects where you are locating low-income units in a higher income neighborhood, or vice versa, if you're bringing market rate rents or moderate rate rents into a lower income neighborhood. Other home loan bank districts, as we'll see on the next slide, use this flexibility to specifically reward Native American housing projects. The eighth category is subsidy per unit, and like I said, the maximum value is going to differ by the district. But in all cases, the more you ask for, the worse you will score. So we want to reward projects that are really maxing out their other funding sources, taking advantage of other resources that are available. And that means that if you, in New York, if you come in asking for $30,000 per unit, which is our maximum amount, you're going to be scored kind of at the bottom in that category. And the projects that come in asking for, $10,000, $15,000 are going to get more points in this category, which they might be able to make up across all the other criteria. But it's common across the banks that the more you ask for per unit, it's going to make it tough to score well. The ninth and final category is community stability. This just means that you're keeping the overall housing stock about what it was before or increasing it. We don't want to see projects that, it was like a 100-unit building, which is not really the case for most of you, and is going down to 20 units of affordable housing and the rest are market rate. It doesn't necessarily have to be a one-to-one, like you could go down to 99, for example, but we want to see that the project is really enforcing and sustaining the stock of affordable housing. Okay, so we spoke with our colleagues in a couple of home loan banks which I mentioned, and two specifically do interesting things to encourage and reward projects with tribal housing authorities. The first is Des Moines. I think a couple tribes in the room have had experience with the home loan bank there, even winning awards. and they do the most. I think they told us like 130 projects in the history of the Des Moines Bank have gone to tribal housing authorities, which is by far and away the most that we know of. So those guys are very experienced. They don't have a team specifically dedicated to tribal housing projects, but they seem very knowledgeable, familiar with the issues, and would be very helpful and supportive in working with you on your project. Sorry, did you?
Oh, and I was just gonna say, then they kind of know what it takes to score well for one of these projects, so
Exactly.
it may be a good way to resource to talk to them about.
Exactly, and for really all the home loan bank districts, except for during the brief window of the year when they're actually scoring applications, the staff would be more than happy to talk to you about your project, even going into very specific details of the budget, all the scoring criteria. They want to see you do well.
And you can go to any of the banks, it doesn't have to be one that's right in your district, correct?
So the home loan bank,
Uh-huh.
you don't, okay. Our member banks are, they are in our districts.
Uh-huh.
So, but some national banks are only a member of one or two
Oh, okay.
districts. So, for example, Citibank is in our district, New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. You could theoretically work with Citibank in California and apply for our funding in New York and win an award from us.
Or Des
But
Moines, I mean, say maybe.
if the bank is
Yeah.
is a member of the
Yeah.
Des Moines Bank. So you're gonna apply to the home loan bank that your bank is a member of.
Okay.
So in Des Moines, in one of their scoring criteria, the second district priority, if you're a native housing project, they automatically give you 13 of the 20 points in that category, and it's possible that with these other ways to get points, that you can fill up in that category and get 20. So they're really going out of their way to recognize that it's a true need in the district, and Des Moines covers basically the entire northwest of the U.S. They absorbed Seattle a couple of years ago. So it's a massive area with lots of tribal housing need, and they've really recognized that by rewarding the projects in this way.
And so that's the only bank that gives the points, the Native Housing points?
That we know of,
Okay.
yeah. And it's possible some others do, but this is certainly the most prominent. In San Francisco, they encourage and reward tribal housing projects in slightly different ways. They adapted their definitions of what kind of income standards they'll take into account, and then they accept different kinds of documentation, for example, from tribal entities where other home loan banks would require it of state and local governments. Yeah.
Is the New York Bank considering a similar program?
Yeah, so we're thinking about it. We are, I don't want to say late to the party, but we have
We
considered.
are late to the party.
Yeah, I'd say we're learning about our district, and we're seeing if those kinds of things would help.
Ryan, could you repeat his question? I'm not sure if everyone.
Sure, yeah, so he asked if the New York Bank, which covers New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, was considering adopting similar language to this. And we are always considering this and things like this to improve the fit between our criteria and our housing needs in our district.
And is there a particular economic or legal criteria that you're evaluating in connection with that?
No. Not yet. Yeah, just thinking about it.
And how do I encourage the Chicago's Home Loan Bank to do the same?
Talk to them.
Call them.
Okay.
Well, the Chicago Bank has made many, many awards.
They certainly have as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't want to say that these are the only adaptations that any of the home loan banks are. These are prominent ones. The San Francisco Home Loan Bank, I think, has awarded 30-something tribal project awards, and Chicago has done a bunch as well. Great, so you meet the eligibility thresholds, you score well against your competitors in that year's round. Now on to the project financial review. I won't spend too much time on this, but the point is that we're going to look at the numbers, and during this phase, unlike the first two phases where essentially be radio silence from the analysts who are evaluating your project. During the financial review, we'll call you, or we'll send you an email and say, these are 8 or 10 questions that we have about your budget, about the financial workbooks that you sent, where's the documentation for this, is this the right number? And we'll say, is the need that you told us was your need, the real need based on what we're seeing in the numbers?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah,
Ryan?
sure.
So when if you are working with a home loan bank, you've submitted your project, and that analyst calls you or emails you, answer them. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to fight for your project. If they're calling you, it's a good thing. They're calling you because they want to know more about your project. They want to know about your funding. They want to know about your criteria so that they can then go to their management, go to our board, and we can fight for you. So if an analyst calls you or sends you an email and says, hey, give me some more information, or explain this piece of your budget to me, call them back. It's, if you give them the information they are asking for, they can then go and fight for your project. Whereas if they never hear back from you, you're now put on the back burner because there's somebody else who has called them back and has given them the information that they need, and they can go fight for that. So it is a very important point that we convey to our sponsors and to our members, is that during the financial review, when an analyst calls or sends you an email or sends you a letter, call them back. It will help your project tremendously.
So in New York, we have kind of an extended lag. I don't know if it's relatively long compared to the other home loan banks, but as Nina said, you submit your application in the spring, early summer, and then the awards aren't made until the late fall. And in some of the conversations we've been having, we've heard a lot about turnover in tribal governments and how sometimes that affects the housing authority as well. And with such a long period, there's going to be, you want to make sure that knowledge from the staff is still there when we come back and ask you for information. And that's true during the financial review, and it's certainly true 5, 10, 15 years later when we're monitoring your project after you've received an award.
Yeah, why would you want to reward on a project in the late fall? Because we all come from different regions, and sometimes in the late fall, some of us are already approaching winter, and some of us can't even start a project in the winter or break ground of it. So if we apply for some monies in 2017, and you guys are expecting, as being a part of our financial backing, to see some progress being made on a project, but if we come from a high wintry area, how can you expect progress in 2017? You may not see until the spring of 2018.
And that's fine.
And, you know, and that's like defaulting on the agreement.
No, it's a good question. So 2 things to notice. Each home loan bank's calendar is different. Some give out their awards during the winter time, or January, February. We have a different cycle. The other point to note is we make the award in October, November in New York, but that's not necessarily when the checks go out the door. So after we announce the awards, then each project that received a commitment has to demonstrate that it meets some key milestones. Permits being in place, things like that. And once that happens, then the funds can be drawn down. So I guess it would be a lot of, it's unlikely that the funds would be dispersed the immediate winter after an award. I don't know, we could talk more about that, but you should find out from your home loan bank district when their cycle is.
And the other point about that is just because we have made the award and we're dispersing the funds to you, it does not also indicate that your project needs to be building right at that moment. When you're applying for a project or applying for funding, there's construction costs, there's development costs. You might not be building just yet. You might be planning to start building in May of the following year,
Right.
which is when the funding will come in handy, and that's when you go and you will actually draw on the funds. So just because the award has been made to you in 2017, that does not mean that you need to start building in 2017 or you need to be finishing building in 2017. You do have a certain amount of time afterwards to work on your project.
All right, I've mentioned many of these tips already. The most important one is please ask for help. We're not shy about that. We're happy to talk to you. The member banks that are in your area, it's possible they've submitted AHP applications themselves before and can walk you through this. And our understanding is there are some pretty sophisticated, experienced consulting firms that could walk you down this path as well. So, you know who you are. There are at least 3 or 4 authorities in the room who have won AHP awards, and I would love for them to share their experience, maybe just for a couple minutes now because I know we're running out of time, but definitely during the breaks as well. If you're interested in AHP, please do reach out to your friends and colleagues in the room.
Well, who has received funds? Can we get a show of hands?
If you
So
don't
that
raise your
everybody
hand,
can get an
I will
idea
call
of
on.
who these folks are, who have been successful. Fantastic.
All right, so we have the folks from Bad River over here and White Earth in the back. And Red Cliff here. Okay, and who are you? I didn't even know about you. Yeah.
Oh, we have received 2 AHP funding through the Boston.
Great. All right, you're in Maine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome. All right. Happy you're here. So I guess
Any volunteers?
yeah, any volunteers, just what I guess something that I think your colleagues here in the room would like to know is what was hard or what was different about this process in a way that separated it from other funding sources you might turn to. Like, was it really a burden or was it a challenge in a different order of magnitude from your NAHASDA funds, from USDA funds, or was it a pretty smooth process? Go for it.
Travoy was our
Hang on, a microphone is headed your
Microphone
way.
is brought to you.
Deb with Bad River Housing. Travoy was our Bad River, or was our asset management and design firm. So that's how we learned about the AHP. We paid them an additional fee to submit the application. We didn't have the capacity or knowledge to be able to put the application together. So that was fairly easy. The member bank that we initially worked with, we have accounts at the member bank. And so in the spring, they agreed and signed the paperwork to be our member bank. When the application was approved in the fall, they said, no, we're not gonna do it anymore. So we had to scramble and find another member bank. None of our local, we have another bank that we have an accounts with. That's also a member bank. They said, no, we can't do that. So we went to Bay Bank, which is an Oneida-owned bank, and Jeff agreed to be our member bank for the AHP loan or grant, and it went very smoothly once we found that. But that was a big glitch and delayed us for at least 2 months in getting our funding. So that was a big issue.
So in some cases, we've heard that for the same reason that some banks are hesitant to make mortgages on tribal land.
Well, no, they've done AHP grants before. They said there was an internal, some of their internal capacity. The person who had done it had left, that they didn't have anyone in the bank that could manage that. So they weren't doing it anymore.
All right, well, it succeeded at the end of the
Yeah, then after we got the money and then it was successful. We also had, with the flood this last summer, we had disaster relief grants through the state that were managed by the Federal Home Loan Bank. And again, Bay Bank stepped in and helped us because none of the local member banks would help us with that, but that worked really well.
Great. All right.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, any others
I
wanna
just,
share this
want-
with-
is everything's done online now, right? With the application process is all done
Uh,
online?
so each home loan bank manages their own application process. For us, you send us a whole bunch of Excel files and PDFs. It's very different depending on the home loan bank.
Okay,
In our case, it is an online application,
Okay.
and it's an interactive form that once you start filling it out, it gives you the fields that you have to continue to fill out.
Great, well, so we didn't get time to talk about our first-time home buyer program that each home loan bank has at least one set-aside program for first-time home buyers. And in Des Moines, they have a special set-aside, a special window for first-time home buyers. They're affiliated with tribal housing authorities. And we didn't get a chance to talk about our community lending program, which our day-to-day business is giving loans to our member banks. And for economic development and affordable housing purposes, we can give discounted loans to our member banks that we hope they pass along at least some of the discount to their end customer, which could be the tribal housing authority. So reach out to your home loan bank. Like I said, the analyst there would be happy to talk to you about your project in detail. And each of the district's websites, which are here, and you should have a copy of the presentation in your materials as well, each of the websites should have a list of the member banks in their area. So if you speak to the member banks, potentially it's a bank that you already have a relationship with as a tribe. Maybe that would smooth some of the challenges that we just heard about. Reach out to them and see what you can learn from their past experience. And Nina and I will be here all day. We're happy to chat with you during the breaks, over lunch. We're excited to learn about Native American housing issues. We really are eager to hear the next few presentations. But we're happy to give you advice on the affordable housing program as well. So thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate your time.